Um, so I'm going to just pass the mic over. They're going to tell a little bit of their own personal journeys. And then we really want to encourage, hold on, Georgie Elliott, we're going to push you upstairs. Yeah, you guys can go find a seat upstairs. Be curious, be open, learn. One of the coolest things I learned about video game design is that all video game design companies have a sound person. And so if you're like have nothing to do with like video game like coding or whatever, there's still roles at these jobs that are at these companies that are pretty cool. How it's going to run is they're going to do their shtick. They're going to talk. You guys can engage. And then I think about 10:10, we want you guys to actually tour the OC animation studio upstairs. There's some students that have been warned that you're coming through. They're like 2 years older than you. So if you see one of them, ask them questions. There's one girl, Isabel, that's I've already primed to like talk to you about the finances and talk to you about the work, like what the workload actually is. So there's chances for you guys to just reach out, get curious, and hopefully you find some value in the day. Cool? And then obviously follow up via your teachers, or if these gentlemen are willing to give out their information, you can follow up directly, or I'm sure there's time for all that if you're super keen. There'll be a little break at 10:45, and then you'll stay in here, and then we're going to do a computer game talk, and then you'll have lunch, and then you'll go back on the bus. Is that cool? Awesome. Do you want to, who wants to start? Yeti Farms.
Hey, Rutland, how's it going? Make some noise. I asked for the auto-tune mic, but I guess it's not working. I want to sound like I'm singing the whole time. Yeah, so my name's Todd Ramsay. I'm one of the founders and owners of Yeti Farm Creative here. We have about 150 employees right now working on a few different projects. I just wrapped up Hotel Transylvania. That's probably one that you guys would know, the series there. Yeah, and a couple other ones that are going on that are just starting up that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. So they're very quiet and hush hush. Most of the stuff we work on in animation, you can't actually talk about or show any of your work until it actually airs on streaming service or TV or wherever it's going to be. So yeah, just a little bit about my background. I mean, I kind of started where all of you guys are. I was born and raised here in Kelowna. I went to Kelowna Secondary School. And I was a terrible student. I got a lot of bad grades. I was pretty much a C average, and I didn't want to step it up a little bit and start getting A's or B's because I knew that my parents would expect it all the time. So I kind of sat around C's and slacked all the time. But the one thing I did get A's in was art. Like I just always had a passion for art and absolutely loved it. Back then, I'm dating myself now, but it was a lot of, there wasn't much animation out. I think Toy Story had just come out, and the first one, and I mean there was lots of 2D animation out, but 3D was like a brand new thing. And so at that time I just decided like, okay, well I want to be able to make money doing art, so I think animation would be a really good way to go. I did spend a couple of years doing fine arts, and I really enjoyed it, but I couldn't really figure out a way to make a living doing it. So you know, from there I did 2 years of fine arts and then went and worked in the oil fields in Alberta. And that was a really good learning experience because it made me realize how much I hate like that kind of work and being cold every day and just covered in oil. And yeah, it was disgusting. So after that, I came back and I did one more year of fine arts and then went off to Vancouver, went to Vancouver Film School. And then got my first job working. It took about a year to find that first job. I was painting houses and just kept updating my demo reel, and finally got that first job because one of the people I went to school with was now a director, so he recommended me. And so started working. It was such a struggle. I think the first day at work I was so nervous. I was sweating so bad I had to go home at lunch and change my shirt. I was just right freaked out. But you know what, after about a week I just completely settled in, and I think just knowing everyone else around me, we all had that same common goal. Like we all enjoyed making art. It was such a difference from high school where, you know, high school at KSS at the time, it was really cliquey there. Everyone's kind of in groups, and then you get into the industry and, you know, we all have that like-minded thing where we're all there to for the same purpose, to create animation and art. So That studio I worked at was kind of around the .com crash, so I only worked there for 2 months, and then that studio shut down. And then my first real series job was on a show called Mucha Lucha, working at Bardel in Vancouver. It was a Warner Brothers show, and that was a lot of fun. Learned a lot on that, and then from there I went over to a studio called Pork and Beans and worked on a show called Yakety Yak. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was a pretty fun one. And yeah, from there just kind of bounced around to different studios, different job titles. I think my third animation job, I moved up to animation director, and I think it was just people kind of recognized, the producers recognized how hard I worked and how like much attention to detail I had. And I wasn't the best artist in the whole group, but I think the work ethic really paid off at that point. So yeah, from there, just kind of kept doing, working different animation gigs and jobs. It's all contract based in animation. So if you're working on a show that lasts a year, after that year, your contract ends. So it's kind of up to you to find other jobs. And yeah, so from there, got a first directing job back at Bardel again. And then after that job, just moved out of Vancouver to another city, Port Moody, just outside, and just started freelancing. My daughter was born, and so someone had to stay home because my wife's a producer, so she was working at Rainmaker at the time, and someone had obviously had to take care of the daughter. So that was my job, and then I just kind of sprinkled in some freelance work along the way. After about 2 years of doing that, then my wife and I were like, you know what, we really want to change of lifestyle. We want to kind of quieten things down, and so we took 2 weeks off work, packed up our car, packed up our baby, and we went to Tofino. And we thought that, this is going to be the life. We're just going to surf and just hang out on the beach every day, maybe run a bed and breakfast. And we spent a week there and realized like it's not really the place to raise a kid, right? There's not much to do, and it's just felt very isolated. So then we moved to Nelson. We got to Nelson, and we were walking down the street, and we are the only ones wearing shoes, I think, and there was just like a cloud of marijuana everywhere. And so we thought that maybe not be the best place to raise a child. And then we were driving back through and ended up back here in Kelowna. And we are just at my dad's, and my wife was like, well, why don't we do Kelowna? Let's move to Kelowna. And I was like, I don't know, like this is where I grew up. It feels like a step back. And she talked me into it. And then it was about a month later, we moved here, and I was just freelancing at the time. I was renting a desk at the collab just to get out of the house. The basement was driving me nuts. And then, yeah, this old colleague from Vancouver approached us, and he's like, "Oh, you guys are in Kelowna now. Like, I'd love to get you guys going on some work. This guy was working at the Capture Lab at EA Sports. He's like, we want to pull some work out of Prague and bring it back to the Okanagan. So yeah, he set us up with 5 students straight out of the one of the local schools here. And yeah, we got our start that way. That was probably 6-7 years ago. And then we started with 5 animators, and we just kept growing and knocking down walls in our building and expanding and taking on new contracts. And I think what really kind of helped us at that time was just our attention to detail and the quality, and just having some good leads in the house, like really good directors and supervisors, and started building up a reputation that way. And then we signed a deal with Atomic Cartoons based in Vancouver. That went on for 3 years, and then that ended, and we started working with a bunch of other studios, because for those 3 years we were exclusive with Atomic. And then after that we kind of branched off and started taking on our own work. And as a studio, I mean, we do our service work to keep the lights on and to build talent and train talent. And our main passion is developing our own shows and our own IPs. That's a really tough road to go. Like, I can tell you a little bit about that, but just I've had 2 shows that I've created that have gone into development. The most recent one with Amazon, and spent 2 years of my own time just building the show and developing it. And Amazon would set me up with a writer and fly me down to Santa Monica, and go into Amazon, and we'd write scripts and just like hash out ideas. And then Amazon sent out a press release saying that they weren't moving ahead with any new kids content. So I saw that before I got the call from them saying we wouldn't be moving ahead with your show. So I'm hoping third time's the charm, but it's like, just never give up on that, right? So hopefully that'll happen. My wife has a live action show that we just got a development deal with Disney on, so that's pretty exciting. And yeah, that's sort of what drives us. We do like doing the service work, especially when it's a really cool show. Hotel Transylvania, for one, was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed working on that. Love the characters and everything. And yeah, but we still are really excited to make our own stuff and to grow this industry here in Kelowna. You know, being my hometown, I really love seeing like people like you just being, you know, getting into animation and you know, being able to have something like this here, because 10 years ago we didn't have anything really animation related, so it's really exciting. Yeah, that's the quick version of my story, the clean version.
Thank you for sharing your story. We have our students streaming in from our high school, so if they have any questions virtually, or if anyone here has any questions they want to ask. All just listening in awe there, Todd. Thank you. I have a question for you. This is one that we always like to talk to students about, is what kind of jobs do you have right now? So you have animators, if you're developing shows, do you have writers, you're doing that? What kind of
So for the service work, I mean, for our own IP, we do our own writing in-house. But with the service work, most of the writing is done, let's say, for instance, with Hotel Transylvania, it was done in Toronto.
Right.
And the voice records too, the voice actors, everything was cast there.
Yeah.
And the storyboards were done there. But with we're working on another show right now called Pete the Cat. And on Pete the Cat, we're doing all the storyboards. We're doing all the design work for it as well. So there are a lot of designers. I would say the majority, probably like 80% of the staff at Yeti Farm are all animators.
Right. So it just so happens, I believe most of these students signed up, they're in a computer animation class. Are you looking for the computer skills, the artistic skills? When you're hiring new talent, what are you looking for?
So I would say like art fundamentals come first. You know, if you can get that background of, I don't know if you do any pencil and paper assignments, even just like the bouncing ball, the jumping flower sack, all that stuff, just having that foundation and understanding the principles of animation is definitely the most important thing. And then second is the software. I mean, Toon Boom Harmony and being able to use that computer software to apply the traditional principles to animation. And yes, definitely work ethic will get you a really long way for sure.
I see Mr. Major nodding his head as well. Do you have any questions, Mr. Major or Mr. Hauk? Is there any questions from our virtual classrooms?
Yeah, we do have actually a question from RSS, from Max. He's asking, what other positions do you have at Yeti Farms beside animators?
So yeah, animators, designers. We have background designers, character designers. We have huge production staff as well. I mean, if your art skills, you don't feel like they're there, but you still love the industry and want to work in it, I mean, you can work in the management side of things, manage people, just like any other company. You know, we have the HR and the financial accounting people, yeah, coordinators as well. Just kind of working under the producers and being out there on the floor, working with animators and coordinating productions.
Is it as cool as we think, working in a high tech? Is it like Google, or what kind of environment do you have to work?
You know,
there?
it's all I really know, so I
Yeah.
can't really compare it to anything else other than the oil fields, which is
Yeah.
completely different.
Right.
But
It, slippers and pajamas.
yeah, exactly. Like today, I'm really cleaned up. I mean,
Yeah.
normally it's sort of like you just kind of wear what you want. It's really cool that way. There's dogs running around the studio. There's
Yes. We stepped on
video
one upstairs,
games,
actually.
PlayStations, shuffleboards, foosball tables. You know, we try and make it fun, but at the same time, it's kind of you
How are
still
the-
have to work.
Yeah, and how long were the hours?
It really depends. I mean, it's sort of about. I don't even like to say hours because you know it depends on if you're a senior or a junior animator. Usually, junior animators obviously will get paid less because they have less experience, but they have to work the same amount of hours, but they get easier stuff to work on. We try and keep everything 9 to 5, but it is up. There are a lot of people that end up working late hours because they're not as focused throughout the day and not able to get that amount of quota done throughout the day. So that's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any more questions? Okay.
Question is, can you work remotely?
Not at first. I mean, you can work remotely. We have a few remote animators, but they've been in the industry for a while, and you know they're kind of at that point in their lives where they're raising families. And we actually have a few that are on Vancouver Island and a couple up north as well. So obviously they can't work in house, but I think if you know they have that good work ethic and they have that talent and experience, and we can rely on them without having to be too hands-on, then yes, for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Todd, thank you for that. And next we'll move to Chris. And Chris works in the animation for Okanagan College. And I know I've had the pleasure to talk to Chris before, and you've worked at many studios as well. And we're going to try to wrap up after we talk to these three gentlemen. We're going to do a tour of the OC Animation as well this morning. So thank you, Chris.
All right. Hello. Is this working? So talking about dating yourself, I'm gonna one up you on that one. I don't know how well you guys know your parents, but what were they doing, say, around 1984? Anybody know? Well, while your parents were doing whatever they were doing in '84, don't say it if it's something we don't want to hear. That's when I was starting in the animation industry. Yeah, so it's been actually this May it'll be 36 years. So yeah, I'm old. Old as hell. No, I'm younger. I look younger than I am. I've done pretty much everything I can imagine doing in animation at this point. I started off in traditional animation because there weren't computers at that point. I worked at Disney. I worked at Don Bluth Studios for a while. I've lived all over the world. Every time I go and count the countries, I keep forgetting a couple of them. So yeah, I've moved all around with this. I've been a traditional animator, was in visual effects for many years. I've supervised, I was in games. Anybody here play Horizon Zero Dawn? No, one or two. Used to be more popular. I was animation supervisor on that for a while, so a lot of fun. I ran my own studio for 10 years. I lived in Ireland for 14 years, all through Scandinavia, Germany. I've taught on and off for over 20 years as well, and places like Animation Mentor, if you've ever heard of that. It's there from the beginning of that. The Animation Workshop in Denmark for several years. And every studio I've worked in, I've always been training and teaching as well. These guys, Bardel, I've had a long relationship with. One of my earliest jobs, the first couple of years I was animating, Bardel started up, and I ended up there kind of by accident. There's a long story behind that one. On a production I was on, got lifted from the studio it was in and basically walked down the street and plunked down to Bardel, and they had never done any animation at that point. It was the very first thing that they were going to do with animators, so they just picked up the end of the production. So from there, I've worked on and off with Bardel for 30 years. Yeah, I know. I ended up coming to Kelowna in, was it 2015? I was back at Bardel again in Vancouver, and they had a production that was being done out here that lost its supervisor. So I was asked to kind of come out for a couple of weeks at a time and help supervise. I'd only been to Kelowna before for hockey things for one of my sons. He was playing junior hockey, and I'd only ever seen arenas. So as soon as I was in Bardel, and it's right by the city park, right? And you're looking out at the lake, it's like, this place is amazing. And so I was just getting poked by the owner of Bardel. I was like, don't you want to move to Kelowna, take over the studio there? So eventually he said yes. So I was running the studio out here for a couple of years, loving it. But then I started getting word in my ear from Okanagan College as the program was being set up. I was on the project or the program advisory committee, helping them to develop the ideas on how it should be run. And I was being asked, do we want to maybe teach here for a little while? And I was like, just seemed like the right thing at the right time. So eventually jumped ship and started working here, started redeveloping the animation program with a slightly different bent. You guys have probably all looked into animation schools. If you're in the animation program right now, you've probably looked at some of the schools around, right? And most of them are following the same sort of idea. They teach you how to animate, they teach you how to use software, and then they kick you off into the world, right? And off you go. And your story is very similar to a lot of people's, right? You go and you hit the streets and you try and find work, and you get a lot of rejection. And eventually, how did you actually get your job? Someone you knew, right?
Someone I do, yeah.
It's the network that will get you in a lot of cases. Don't take it that it's actually hard to break into the industry, because it's actually not. Every studio I know is looking for animators, right? Everybody needs animators constantly. Like the vast number of jobs are animation. You want to be in storyboard, you can still get in. It's harder to get in as a junior. But if you go in as an animator and they get to know what you're like and know your work ethic and your attitude, you can then probably start as a junior storyboard artist after you're already in. So animation's your way in. However, like I said, there's this big divide. You've got the studios need people, the animation students want to get a job, and then you get this HR cesspool that just sits there in between, and you don't know, like, how, there's like hundreds of people sitting in this HR pool. How do you know what the best people are? And the best people isn't necessarily the best artists. Now, I've been on the hiring side for a long time as well, right? As animation director, as a supervisor, or as a studio owner. And I've said many, many times, and I've heard this echoed by a lot of people who probably say the same thing. I would rather hire somebody with half the talent of, you know, some fantastic junior animator if they had the right attitude. Attitude trumps everything. If you come in and you're ready to work and you're enjoying your job and you take pride in your work and you actually will be, you know, look at your scenes and make sure that everything's right before you submit it, and you're going to be diligent with, you know, getting your job done and meeting your deadlines. See, these are the people that don't have to do lots of overtime, when they don't watch YouTube while they're working and distract themselves and do all these other things that you could never do in any other job. You know, if you come in with an entitlement sort of attitude, you're not going to do well. If you can learn to, you know, be the best employee, the best animator, and like for a studio, then everybody wants you. That's what they want. They want you to be able to do the job, but that comes more from the attitude than it does from the art. It's a nice balance of them. But how do you find that in this HR pool of hundreds of people? What happens, and you find this as well, right? As somebody that's working in a studio already recommends a friend, that's the one you grab, because you already know that that person, because they're recommended by somebody you trust, is going to have the right attitude, and they're going to be the better choice than picking somebody that you've never met and you don't know. So this is what we're trying to do with the Okanagan College program, is bridge that gap. We don't just teach you skills and throw you out into the world. We help you get a job. And the whole program is set up only teaching a couple of different jobs, but teaching you all the skills you need to actually do that job well. So you're employable. Plus, all the people that are teaching in this program have been in the industry like nearly as long as me. We know everybody. So, I mean, if I was to tell you about one of my students and say, oh, this is our top student, you want them, would you even need to interview them? Because I wouldn't give them, I wouldn't a false story and just say, oh, everybody's wonderful. If they're doing really well, but they've got a few issues, I'll tell them about, oh, in fact, I just gave you a sheet with telling you everybody's good and bad points. You know that nobody's gonna be perfect. So if you see some things in there that they're gonna need to work on, then that you at least know that and you're ready to work with them. So if you've got a big network of people that you know, you can get other people jobs, and that's what we're doing. In all the departments, we have people that know everybody all over the world. So we are working with those studios, partnering up with them, not just with HR, but with the decision makers, the studio owners, the animation directors, the supervisors. And we are giving them people. And then we ask them as well, what do you need in a junior animator? Because it's different in different studios. Like say you mentioned Atomic. I was just in Atomic about a month ago, talking about what they need for their animators. And they're using Harmony. Who here has been using Harmony, Toon Boom Harmony? Guess what? They use it in a very different way than the way that Toon Boom has on their website. All their training stuff, Atomic do it in a different way. And you need to know that before you go and try and get a job there. You don't want to be, you know, hit with this on your first day. It's like, by the way, we use it completely differently. So we're finding out from the studios what their needs are. And then we're going to train you to do what those studios need. Like we've got an animator right now who loves like Game of Thrones and all that kind of stuff. And he wants to work at Image Engine where they did all the dragon stuff. I was an animator there and supervisor for many years. So I'm able to walk in, take him there, introduce him, and help him get a job there. This is how our program is different. Anybody here actually thinking about doing this as a career? Yeah, what kind of places do you want to work in? Animation, visual effects, cartoons, stop motion? What kind? Kind of easy. Guess what? We make you do both. In our program, we don't let you choose, and you don't have to do like a whole foundation year of art first. We're assuming that you already have an art background, right? That's why we have a portfolio. You have to be, you know, just competent, and you have to have a good eye. You have to, you know, be able to at least draw and, you know, use a computer. We can teach you how to animate. We can teach you how to do, you know, proper perspective and all those kind of things, and how to actually do the job. But the best animators in the world, or the ones that are the most hireable, are the ones who are versatile. You remember that time when we were doing the cops? There's a show at Bardel. We committed all of our 2D resources to this one show. And we had over 100 people assigned to this one show, and 2 days before it was about to start, the show was canceled. So we had to tell all these people, guess what? That job doesn't exist anymore. If you can do 3D, then we can put you on one of the other productions right away. So out of those 100 people, guess how many had 3D skills as well? Heard this story before. One person.
And the rest went to Yeti Farm?
Pretty much, yeah, you got them all. Yeah, one we could put onto 3D. Actually, one went into storyboard as well, but that was it. Without the versatility, being able to do both, they left themselves not as employable. So we make sure that you're as employable and as attractive to the studios as possible. Anybody here thinking about getting into games or visual effects? No? Okay, maybe. There's better money in it, by the way. It's the other thing you want to look at too when you think about it as a career is like, and this will be one thing your parents will ask is like, oh, is this a real job? You know, and I got that as well when I was learning, right? That's, you know, well, go into business or go into sales and you can do like animation as a hobby because it's not a real job. Sure, it's a real job. I mean, if you're doing it for a few years and depending on where you work or what aspect of the industry you're working in, you could be working, you know, making up to like 70,000 a year. You start supervising or directing, you'd be making 100,000 a year. Depends on where you go and depends on, you know, like who you're working for. Because the same job in a different place could pay a lot more. It depends on what they're working on too, what the budget of the show is. You could be in one studio and one project has a low budget, and so the rate on that's lower. Another, you know, project might have a huge budget, some Netflix thing that's got, you know, bucket loads of money in it. So you can choose your jobs wisely, but you also do what you enjoy, right? If you can afford to, you know, when you're young and you're not married, you don't have kids to take care of, you can pick the jobs you want to do, take time off in between. That's the other good nature about having these jobs where you can, you're on a project and then you're on another project. You can move around. You can have time in between to relax. It's a perfect sort of job.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, sorry,
No, that was wonderful. I want them to have the time to
Okay.
make sure they tour your studio with you so they'll be able to learn more from you. So I was listening to what you said and I heard two things loud and clear. Versatility and attitude is everything.
Oh, yes.
And those are probably something that us as educators also value in this room as well. So they're going to have time to go upstairs with you and ask some questions about the animation studio. Is there any questions remotely? Those students obviously aren't going to join us at the animation studio. Do you guys have any questions right now or wait till you get up there? And Mr. Major did let us know there are a few gamers out here perhaps too. Just a quiet room. So thank you for your expertise, Chris. We appreciate it. And then next for Bardel, and I think your websites are showing up on your face, and this was maybe our most neutral background. So I know there's Mr. Ross's kids, but anyways, yeah. So, okay.
One question from Miss Hussey's class. How do you keep up with animation trends?
Good question.
That is a good question. Now, by trends, do you mean in like art trends or software trends or what? Okay, well, I'll hit both then. Art trends, it's not really your job because your job as an animator is to be the director's tool. Whatever the director tells you, whether or not it is what you like or your own sensibilities, this is what is correct to do for that show and for that director. So it's the versatility that's important, not keeping up with trends, because you might then fall into the trap of thinking, well, this is what's trending now and I'll do things this way. But on that show, it's a completely different style. You can't afford to have your own style. You have to be adaptive and be able to take on any style that you're working on. And as far as software goes, whatever software you are using, if it's Harmony for 2D, which is pretty much industry standard now, or Maya for 3D, you should keep on top of what's happening with the newest versions. Just keep up with the new tools that come out. The thing is, you're not going to be using the latest version on almost any show because no studio wants to change to a new version in the middle of a production. So you're usually like 2 versions back with everything, right? Because that's the most stable thing. It's the stability that's more important than new tools for most studios. So keep up with the tools, be aware of the trends, but be more aware of whatever show it is you're working on, learning all the rules for that show.
Thank you. Good question there. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. So I'm listening to their stories so far, and it sounds like quite a few people have gone through Bardel. And so luckily we have Trent from Bardel with us. So thank you, Trent.
Right. Hello, hello. Okay. So you guys are in high school, right? Grade 11, grade 12? I just have a couple questions. First, has anyone here done anything super, super illegal? Like I'm talking, you can go to prison if you get caught for what you did. Merle? Nobody? Oh, somebody? Okay, we can talk later. But that's how I got in the industry. I broke the law. Not by choice, but just because that was my situation I was in at the time, and I'll tell you about it. But let's go back a little bit. I was born in the Yukon in Whitehorse in 1975, before a lot of you were born. We didn't have a television. We had it was like a Fisher-Price projector where you put in these cartridges and you turn this crank and you can watch cartoons, these old Disney cartoons and whatever they were. And I remember sitting there watching when I was a little puke. I was 5, 6, and watching these things, and I would study them because I could turn the crank, and as I turned it, I could slow it down frame by frame. I could look at the drawings, see how the animation was being put together in a way. And I remember telling my mom, it's like, I want to make these. How do I do this? And she was like, go feed the dogs. So I was like, all right. Anyway, so from that moment, I had this drive in my head that I wanted to make this thing. And I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. So what I wound up doing was, going to school, high school. Like Todd, I wasn't the best student in high school, mainly because in my head, I thought, I want to do animation. I don't care about biology. I don't want to do math. I don't want to do any of this stuff. So I would put all my efforts into the art classes just because that's what I wanted to do. And then, eventually I graduated. I'm like, cool, high school diploma. Now what do I do, right? So I wound up going to Vancouver, Vancouver Film School. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this place. This was in the mid-90s, 95, so maybe a lot of you were starting to. I was class 10 in 2D. I was taking classical animation. Does everybody know what that is? You guys don't know what that is? You're animation students. Come on, you guys. Classical, where you draw one, you flip the page, you draw another one, you flip the page. It's on a light table. So, 24 drawings is 1 second. We all know that, right?
Bunch of blank faces.
You guys gonna graduate or what? No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so I was doing that and, going through that whole motion, making a short film, which is important. We'll come to that, telling a story. So I made this short little film on 2D, classical animation, and it was about a fish who was making a short film, trying to graduate from film school, and he screwed it up. He spilled coffee all over it, and then he didn't get it done. So that was my film. Here's a true story.
He's a fish.
Right, I was the fish. So I took that, and back then, the internet wasn't really so much around, so I had to put it on a VHS tape. Do you guys know what those are? Yeah? Oh, wow, really?
They've seen them in museums.
They don't know what classical animation is. You know what VHS tapes are. Who has a VHS player? Wow. Holy, what the hell's happening? Okay, this is cool.
Anybody remember Beta?
Beta. So anyway, I had this bag of VHS tapes with my reel on it. And I was walking around Vancouver, still in my head, I want to get in animation. That's my job. That's what I'm meant to do. I know it, right? There was no work in Vancouver. This is 1996, 97. And nobody was hiring. So I'm like, okay, well, now I don't know what to do with myself. This isn't working. So I thought, I'm going to go traveling, because what do you do when you're done college as a student? You go traveling for a while to figure it out, right? So I went to Australia, and in my head, as I'm kind of working my way around Australia, I'm thinking to myself, shit, the animation thing's not working. What the hell am I going to do with myself? And I had this working visa, so I could do these odd jobs. I picked zucchinis. I worked on a prawn farm. I don't know if you know what a prawn farm is. It's basically a big field of mud, and you got to walk around with a bucket and stick your hand in the mud and pull a prawn out, and put it in the bucket, right? And I got paid by the prawn. I think it was like 5 cents Australian or something per prawn. But when I put them in the bucket, they're still alive and they jump out. And then I remember halfway through that job, I was like, fuck this. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going back to school, right? So there was that kind of aha moment for me. So I kind of came back to Vancouver with my tail between my legs, went back to Vancouver Film School, and I found out they were doing this 3D program. First program, they were just starting it up. Maya 2.5, right? And so I get in there, make another little film, right? Still have VHS tapes. I don't know what was happening. This was 1999, I believe. So got these VHS tapes, and I'm like, no, I learned my lesson last time. I'm not going to go around Vancouver. I'm going to take this bag of tapes, and I'm going to go to the source. So I got on a plane, and I went to LA. And that was tricky, because in my head, I'm like, I'm going to just waltz into DreamWorks and be like, hey, check out my reel, you guys. I'm the coolest. I got an interview. And they're just like, so no, again, that's not how it works. I walked in there, and I'm like, yeah, I got an interview with so-and-so. And they're like, oh, what's this regarding? I'm like, oh, I want to give them my reel. And she just goes, oh, yeah, cool. Just kind of puts it behind the desk. I don't know if it was the trash bin or where she put it, but I did that for a good 9 months. And I was working odd jobs, just kind of under the table, getting paid in cash. Dog walking, I worked at this place called Hollywood Hounds. And I had to walk, you know, celebrities' dogs. They'd bring them in before they went to their shoots in the morning, and I'd be standing there, right? Sarah Silverman's got this Dalmatian who's a total asshole. So if you guys know who she is, don't ever play with her dog. It's not trained. So I had this whole whack of dogs, and I'd be walking down Sunset, you know, going, what am I doing? I'm getting paid $10 cash for this. But in my head, I'm still thinking, okay, I'm going to become an animator. I'm in LA. I'm going to make it, right? You know, the big stories about how people make it in Hollywood. So in the meantime, I'm sending my reels through the mail all over. I'm just looking where jobs are, and I'm sending my VHS tape to whomever's hiring. I don't care. I just want to get in the industry, and still got that drive. And I get this letter from this guy in New York one day. He's like, oh, I love your reel. I want you to come out and work for me. And I was like, cool. Jump on a plane. Off I go to Buffalo, New York. And there's this guy waiting for me when I get off the plane. Do you guys know who John Lasseter is? The guy from Pixar? Okay, anyway.
We got a class on that.
He kind of looked like a fatter John Lasseter if you blew him up and then made him really Italian, because he had a big Hawaiian shirt on, and he was standing there, and he's smiling, and he's like, come on, you know. I'm like, oh, this is so cool, right? I just got hired. Now I'm being treated like a star, like I want to be. He's like, come on, I'm going to take you out to dinner. We're going to celebrate. So we go out to dinner, and we're talking, and he's like, so, were you born in LA? You lived there your whole life? I'm like, no. He goes, oh, well, where were you born? I said, Whitehorse. And he goes, where's that? Like Northern California or something? I'm like, no, Northern Canada. And he just goes, you're Canadian? And I went, yeah, it was right on my resume. That's important to remember that point, by the way. And he goes, oh, I thought you were American. I'm like, oh. And he goes, yeah, I can't sponsor you. And I went, oh, okay, because you need a working visa to work down. This is early 2000s. There wasn't a lot of visas for animators in the States. So I went, okay, no problem. I'll get on the plane. He goes, no, we'll make this work, right? And I'm like, great. I'm going to be paid under the table at a working animation studio. He's going to be paying me in cash. I'm going to work there illegally, which I did for about 4 to 6 months. And then one day he comes up to me and he goes, hey, guess what? I got this friend who works at Niagara College just across the border here. And we can put together this whole false profile for you and say that you're a computer engineer, and you can come down to Buffalo and say you're working on a supercomputer to redesign the university. And I was just like, what the hell is happening, right? And then I just went, yeah, okay. Right? That's another thing you got to remember. Just say yes to stuff and just see what happens, because that's kind of how I got right. So next thing I know, he hands, a couple weeks go by, and he comes in one day, and he's got all these papers, and he's like, check this out. You've gone to Harvard, and you did this and that, and you're kind of working at, you got to come down to the States because we're going to get you this visa. It's called the J1 visa. It's for computer engineers. It's the first one. I was just like, cool. What do I do? And he goes, well, we got to go to the border, and you got to tell everybody, the border, the customs agents, what you're doing. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. So I'm got this pile of papers. I'm sitting in the customs office at the border going, I'm about to walk in there and lie to this guy to get this visa to work in the States, right? under this false pretense that I'm this computer engineer. And that was when I was like, oh my God, I'm screwed, right? This isn't gonna work at all. I was freaking out. And then I remember the guy's like, all right, Noble, that's my last name. He's like, come on in. And I kind of get in there and I got my speech prepared because we went through it in the car on the way to the border. He's just like, I got all my answers ready. You know, oh yeah, we got to do the quantum computing equations to, and it's like all this stuff in my head.
Building an arc reactor.
Yeah, that I have no idea what to do. And then he just goes, okay, so yeah, you're going down to Buffalo to work on this computer. That's cool. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, he's reading it over. And in my head, I'm like, I'm going to jail. This is it, right? It's over. And then he just kind of goes, all right. And he grabs a stamp and he starts stamping things. And I'm looking for that kind of big red X. You know, I'm just kind of looking. And then he just goes, all right, welcome to America. And I was just like, okay. So, yeah, walked out of there. And then I was legal to work in the States. I had all this back pay coming to me because my boss was, you know, Fat John Laster was paying me in cash, 20 bucks here and there. But I had all this back pay coming to me. Next thing you know, I'm buying a car. I'm going to rent this big apartment. I'm staying in these hotels. And I was just like, oh my God, this is rules, right? Then 2 years later, I got deported. So
disregard everything he just said.
But I got the experience of working in an animation studio. We went to New York City a lot. I had a lot of my work up on the Times Square screen and stuff. So I'd go and I would consult with the people who were doing that. And I, you know, felt really important. I was in my early 20s and then came back to Canada after I got deported. And I was in Vancouver again. And again, I just happened to know someone who was working in Bardel. And, you know, he said, come on in. And he put me in as an animation supervisor right off the bat. And I was like, oh my God. And then so all of a sudden I'm leading this team of people. Did anyone know what imposter syndrome is? Do you know what that is? It's kind of like when you're
Your
given
homework for today. Look that up. Imposter syndrome.
When you're given a job and the employer is very confident in you, but in your head, you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. You just walk up there and you have to lead a team. You have to do all this animation. That was me. I was leading this team on this production called Leapfrog. It was like a direct-to-DVD show for kids. And I'd walk in there as the supervisor and everyone's like, hey, what do we do? And I'm like, you know, make the frogs leap. And they're just like, all right. I was like, okay, I can do this, right? But I was learning along the way the whole time, right? So did that. And then, yeah, the people at Bardel said, you know, we're going to start a studio up in Kelowna. Do you want to help kind of build it? And I said, sure, I know how to do that. Again, just say yes to things and then just kind of see what happens. Yeah, I can open a studio. Why the hell not? I was like, came here and the studio was actually, you know, where that Flask Social House is? Everybody know where that is? We were in the basement of that building. And I think we could fit about 20 people in there. But oh, actually, no. First of all, we were upstairs in this kind of broom closet place. There was only 4 of us. And we were working on, you know, major shows because our main studio is in Vancouver, but this is like a little satellite studio where we just do animation. And again, I'm walking around going, hey, move that chair. Because I run this place. I know what I'm doing. It's just, people are just like, okay. So it grew. We moved downstairs. We started taking on new shows for DreamWorks. Everyone seen Dino Trucks on Netflix? Yeah, supervised on that. We then we went and did Veggie Tales, did King Julian. We got all these DreamWorks contracts all of a sudden, right? Puss in Boots. So again, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, this is kind of where I wanted to be. I wanted to be working for these studios, these big LA Hollywood studios. But yet here I am in beautiful Kelowna, because I'm more small town. You know, I'm from the north. I'm not really into big cities. They kind of freak me out. Just, you know, working on these big shows. Legally, yeah, right? I even had healthcare, which was kind of cool. So, yeah, and now we're in a bigger studio just on Lawrence over here, and we've got over 80 animators working for us. I've been moved up to director.
Doesn't know how to do that either.
No, Let's be honest. You never really know what you're doing. That's the thing. So,
Well, think about this. I promoted you, moved you up there, knowing you didn't know what you were doing.
right. So blame this guy, right? But then you learn along the way. If you're confident in yourself and you have the drive, that's what you do. So say yes to everything. Follow the work, which you probably don't have to do anymore because Kelowna is, killing it out here. So you guys have that advantage. You don't have to go pick prawns or zucchinis or walk dogs. You can, but you don't need to anymore. So I followed the work. I said yes to everything. And eventually it paid off. So here I am talking to you guys. And I know what you're all thinking. Now, right now, you're like, oh, okay. So now I need to figure out what the hell I want to do. Who actually knows what you want to do? Yeah, nobody basically, except this guy, the guy who did illegal work, right? Or something illegal that we don't know about yet, right? Figure that out as you move along through your course here at high school, and then hopefully when you join Chris Derochie's class, have it in your head. You want to know what you want to do, because that's the tough part. Once you figure that out, then the rest will kind of just start happening, right? Does anybody have any questions about that? Anyone going to call the Border Patrol on
Yeah.
me?
Mark has a question for us.
Questions from the RCMP?
Yeah.
Yep. We just had a question for Trent from Miss Hussey's class. Would you do it all again?
Definitely. Yep. 100%. Because out of all these bad decisions I made, there was always a blessing in disguise in all this stuff. So, well, maybe I wouldn't take the prawn. Well, actually, no, the prawn job was good. I think that's when I had the aha moment. But I probably wouldn't take care of Sarah Silverman's dog anymore.
No, nasty.
Yeah.
Here's one thing, like if you guys are thinking about eventually like moving up to become a supervisor or a director or something like that, it isn't actually about your artwork in that point. It's about being a leader. And the most important thing about being a leader is being decisive and being able to communicate ideas to other people. And so Trent would have gotten moved up in a lot of these positions, not because his artwork was the best, but because he proved his tenacity, right? He was saying yes to things and finding a way. And that's what you want in a leader. Somebody who's going to take on challenges and not, be ruled by fear. You still probably like scared shitless about a lot of these things every time you took these jobs, but you always found a way. And that's who you want leading people, even you. Like the best leaders are not the best craftsmen. Anybody ever see any animation from Walt Disney himself?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty terrible. He was not a good animator. So even from the early days of his studio, he surrounded himself with better artists. His very first animator, Ub Iwerks, who did most of the early work at Disney, was a far better animator than Walt Disney was. And then he just hired the best animators in the world, but he led them. And he was able to get his vision through to them, and they turn and make them into better artists than they already were. Not by being better than them, but by leading them.
Well, thank you to each of you three. Not only have we learned lessons on animation, but we've also learned like life lessons and little take-home messages. And definitely a common thread is work hard, try new things, and put yourself out there. So thank you, you three, for giving us your expertise. We have about 20 minutes. So what's going to happen is Rutland Senior is going to go with Chris and check out the animation studio. And Chris, you need to be back here at 12:45. Please and thank you, or 10:45, 25 minutes. And then Rutland Senior, you guys need to be on the second floor in the kitchen. You know where it is, just right up those stairs right there. And we have another group of experts for you guys to listen to. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for listening. And yeah, so enjoy your tour.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That's just one thing I noticed looking at the crowd here. It's a very male-dominant crowd. And I just wanted to let you guys know that that's kind of how it was when I first started in animation, working in the studios in Vancouver. But our studio right now is about 50-50, so it's completely changed. Just thought I'd throw that in there. It's kind of
that was me, one of my
oddity.
questions. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, Chris, why don't you head out and they can follow you. You can just leave your mics on there, and I'll turn the mics off from here. And sorry about the background. I don't have any